Chapter 19, Hunting 1960, Health 1960, Masonic Lodge. Laverne Lee, Lauren's son, must have invested money as an associate member in the Dunn Working Club when it first formed because the records show that we were funded $50 to him in 1957. He seemed to have lost interest in our group and never attended the meetings or any of the hunting trips. Elmer Wilson got progressively worse in the hearing department following that unfortunate target practice incident, and by 1960 announced that he would not go hunting with us again. Even though we all felt that it was his own responsibility to look after himself, we nevertheless felt guilty and extremely sorry that it had happened. We decided he would undoubtedly go with us again if his hearing returned to normal, but in the meantime, we should return his investment of $100 and grant him an honorary membership that would entitle him to all the privileges the Hunt Club could offer. That fall, after the hunt, at the annual Ladies' Night, held at the Pines Hotel, we presented him with a certificate after a few speeches and a lot of hoodoo. I am satisfied that he was favorably impressed. A few words about the 1960 hunt. John Rogers has always contributed his fair share of humor in the camp, and more than his share of personal effort. He was the luckiest hunter by a long shot, and up to this year had not scored. Not because he had not tried or was a poor marksman, but rather a series of impossible situations. In spite of seeing deer rather consistently, it would seem that some minor thing prevented the desired result. Anything from forgetting to load the gun to falling in the water at the critical moment. In our camp, this set him up for a kidding from everyone along with all kinds of crazy advice. In fact, we have all learned to expect it, and there's just no room for anyone who cannot take it gracefully. My contribution to this effort was a promise to John that I would show him how if he would spend a day with me and follow my advice. After my roaring success with Charlie, I think he half believed that I could do it, so he agreed to be my partner for the day. We followed the same old route that Charlie and I had gone, and as usual, saw nothing up to the same general area that I had been lucky in the past with him. Just when we were in a spot that was so crowded with evergreens that our vision was limited to 25 yards in any direction, we both heard the thundering feet of something running. The footbeats were much too fast for a man to make, and what started as a quiet whisper soon became loud enough to be made by a frightened horse. Sounds in the bush are always deceiving, but there seems to be no doubt that it was directly ahead and coming straight towards us. John and I stood with guns at the ready, side by side with bated breath, trying desperately to pick out a moving object through the dense evergreens. Just when it seemed that the thing should break into our little clearing and run us down, all noise stopped and there was dead silence. Dead ahead, I could faintly make out the outline of a pair of rather large legs, at least as far up as the knees, through the lower part of a small pine tree. I whispered and pointed towards it, saying, "John, right there." He moved his head up and down and then from side to side in an effort to see what I pointed at, without success. After waiting as long as I thought I dare, I aimed between those legs, picked a spot out about 3 feet higher, and fired through the tree. It looked hopeless, but as Lauren Lee would have said, the bullets are a lot closer out there than they are in the gun. There was a loud scurry as the footbeats made a hasty retreat. We walked to the other side of the tree to see plenty of evidence that I had made a good guess. It was an easy matter to follow the blood trail about 75 yards to the dead 2-year-old moose, a rather fine animal that provided us with many good meals. Back in camp, I gave John the devil for not shooting after all my hard work, and he gave me the devil for shooting his moose, so we broke about even. When Florence heard the story at home, she knitted me a jumbo sweater in 2 shades of brown while she was in training at the St. Catherine's General Hospital for my Christmas gift. On the back was a hunter, a tree, and a moose, which told the whole story as I wore it with pride. Dick and Gord were buddies from way back, so they usually hunted together. There are many funny episodes to be told about them, and here is one. Shooting partridge is sort of a secondary sport during our hunting season because one is reluctant to fire the gun and run the risk of spoiling his chances at a deer. We, therefore, generally indulged when there was little chance of disturbing the deer hunt for everyone. Some of the men carried shot shells that could be loaded in the gun rather quickly to replace the slugs, or a single ball of lead, in which case the chances of success were much greater whether the partridge was sitting or flying. Partridge breasts were a real delicacy in camp and enjoyed by everyone. The big deal was to clip their heads off with a rifle or slug and thus not spoil any of that delicious meat. This presents a rather small target, hopeless when flying and difficult when walking, because it is their habit to move their heads forward an inch or two with every step. Thus, if they are walking directly away, the target remains rather constant, but walking crossways, the odds are about 20 to 1 that you will miss. While Dick and Gord were returning to camp at the end of a dull day, Gord noticed a bird to his left calmly strutting at right angles towards him. They discussed whether to take a crack at it or not, and Dick said, "Sure, Gord, go ahead." Gord aimed his 30-30 rifle with all the care in the world and fired. The dirt kicked up about 5 feet past the bird as it nonchalantly sauntered on. A few curses from Gord and a dirty laugh from Dick, and Gord carefully aimed and fired again with the same result. As Dick watched Gord aim for the third time, he raised his own shotgun, loaded with slugs, and took aim at the body of the bird. He waited for Gord to fire and pulled his trigger at about the same time. Gord missed again, but Dick's slug hit dead center, and all that was left of the bird was a few feathers scattered all over, certainly nothing left to take to camp. As Gord did not know Dick had fired, he naturally assumed that it was his bullet that had blown the bird to bits, and all the way to camp he cursed his rifle and his inability to hit the target. That night in camp, Gord raved about an inferior rifle and his intention to get rid of it, and Dick let him continue for nearly half the evening. When Dick finally told the true story, everyone had a big laugh at Gord's expense. The highlight of nearly every hunt trip was the night the two of them decided to tie one on. It happened about once in every season that the lamest excuse to celebrate would start them off. They each took a bottle of rum per year, and their experiments with mixers had to be the funniest thing you could possibly witness. The year we forgot to bring soft drinks probably topped them all. After trying everything from water to the juice from canned peaches and pears, they were both getting pretty high and had the full attention of everyone. I don't know how Dick arranged it, but as they stood facing each other beside the cooking counter, Dick took a sip of the latest concoction and let out a loud yell, just as his trousers fell to the floor, apparently unassisted, exclaiming, "That's the one, Gord!" To follow up, everyone practically demanded Western sandwiches just to see our chef at work. It took a lot of coaxing, which was really part of the fun, to get him started. But from there on, you could laugh until your sides and bellies were sore. It would seem that he could hardly make it to the skillet, and then to the stove, and bending over to light the gas stove with a match was no easy task either. All motion is less than half speed, and it looks reasonable that the skillet will be burned to a crisp long before he can prepare the eggs and bacon mixture to put in it. The next step, cut the bacon in small pieces. You would swear he could lose part of a few fingers with every whack of the razor-sharp butter knife. Then the eggs. As he supported himself with one hand on the counter, he proceeded to break a dozen eggs, one at a time, with the other hand holding each one about 2 feet above the bowl as the contents of the egg fell from the shell. Never missed the bowl, never broke a yolk, or got shells in the bowl. He then picked up the bowl as he leaned against the counter and, with a common table fork, beat the heck out of them. As he explains the procedure in great detail, he is looking at the audience, whose eyes are fixed on the bowl, which is being tipped so that the egg whites hang over the edge by 2 inches. Never spilled a drop on the floor. With great gusto, he poured the eggs into the skillet, and then the chips of the bacon from the second frying pan. The peak of the performance comes as he takes a firm grip of the skillet handle with both hands to flip the omelet. After a violent shaking of the pan and a few false attempts, he has never yet failed. Then shoot a little cheese in it, and you have a Western fit for a king. The above explanation does not even come close to describing the amount of fun and laughter we derived as we watched what is rarely topped by any TV program you have ever seen. Another amusing bit of camp life was a relationship between Frank Lee and Charlie Bowden. From the first time Charlie went with us, he took it upon himself to make improvements in every way possible, such as a skylight in the roof, an indoor flush toilet, propane lights all over the place, an extra propane burner to heat water for the bathroom, a cupboard which contained 12-foot square cubicles properly named for each member's private use, a long pole to hang all the heavy outdoor clothes, the installation of a Marcel, aluminum-faced cardboard paper on the inside of the roof and walls, and many other things. Frank was just as interested in making improvements as Charlie, but his arthritis prevented him from doing the job himself. So it happened that Frank took every opportunity to get Charlie started on a new project. On all those poor weather days when we were all stuck in camp, it was a common occurrence to see the two of them off in the corner privately discussing the next project. The funny part to everyone was the way Frank managed to keep Charlie busy. Just as soon as Charlie got the job started, Frank would shuffle off to the nearest bed and be sound asleep within minutes. But as soon as Charlie stopped swinging the hammer or using the saw, Frank was on his feet again to stand beside Charlie and offer his professional advice. Then back to bed before Charlie could drive the first nail. Nobody knows whether Charlie ever caught on to the system or just didn't give a damn. It is most difficult to put into words my feelings towards good health. To borrow a phrase, one never misses the water until the well is dry, is all too true. I was most fortunate, without realizing it, to have enjoyed my childhood days with no more problems than mumps, measles, and a few colds and a rather poor set of teeth. In the last year of high school, I was hospitalized for an appendix operation, which was more of an experience than a hardship. My back was far from the strongest in the country and somewhat unpredictable. Today, I might be able to lift and carry 150 pounds with ease, and tomorrow be lucky to carry an extra pair of shoes. My first serious experience happened while Bern Vanderkock was with us. How he managed to drive the Ford Ferguson tractor into a ditch, 5 feet wide and 4 feet deep, cultivator and all, is more than I know, but there it was. He naturally came to me for help. We managed to disconnect the cultivator and drive the tractor out, which left the 7-foot cultivator, about 300 pounds, still there. After a lot of maneuvering and hard lifting, it sat on the bank of the ditch. I said, "Let's swing that end around and make it easier to hook up again." I bent forward, and before I had lifted a 1/4 pound, I was certain someone had hit me in the small of my back with a shovel. It took a half hour just to stand straight, and another half hour to walk to the house. The pain was so great I was wet with perspiration, every muscle was tense, and even my fingers rigidly pointing straight out. Reed Johnston was at the house within the next hour, put me on the kitchen table, and without any additional pain, gave me a full osteopathic treatment. His prediction that 3 days would see me going again was true. This was the first of many attacks. My physical efforts were seriously limited, and I never really learned how far I could go with safety. Reed advised me to be examined by an MD in 1960. Dr. Limburner of Hamilton discovered that an underactive thyroid gland which caused myxedema and was in part at least responsible for angina pain, which I thought was indigestion. So here it is, a life sentence to thyroid and nitroglycerin pills. He advised that I sell the farm and try to avoid a heart attack. Financially, this is almost impossible, so I decided to compromise and sell all the hogs, which constituted about half of the operation. Inflation and our government's new policy of handing out easy money to those who preferred not to work made it progressively more difficult to hire farm labor. I got about 5 men in a row who were just not worth their salt. You have no idea how frustrating it became to be compelled to stand by and watch a man who is not interested in the job he is doing, costing double what he was worth, doing a poor job of what would be a real pleasure to do yourself. If you think about it seriously, a firm belief in God, good health, and a good partner are the only important things in life, the very things most of us take for granted. On April 6, 1961, I was initiated into Thomas Hamilton Simpson Masonic Lodge in Stony Creek, numbered 692 on the Register of the Grand Lodge of Canada in the province of Ontario. My sponsors were John Rogers and Frank Lee. For this night only, the master was Alex Barnaby, Senior Warden Bing Harris, Junior Warden Ralph Hill, Chaplain Frank Lee, Senior Deacon John Rogers. In fact, all the key positions were manned by our own Dunwork and Hunt Club, a distinct honor and a great surprise to me. The boys put on a beautiful degree, and I was thoroughly impressed. Ira Lee did his share and also gave me the secrets in the 3rd degree. Immediately after I received my 3rd degree, I was appointed organist for the lodge, which I have enjoyed each year since. Within another year, Ira Lee invited me to join McKay chapter number 243, also in Stony Creek, and again they appointed me organist for that chapter. Nobody should miss the privilege of belonging to Masonry. The rewards are in direct proportion to the amount of effort one is willing to put into the lodge work. All efforts are voluntary, it is educational, and you're bound to meet many outstanding men in every walk of life who are just Masons once they enter the doors of the temple. There is a full account in my files of the remarkable assistance I received from a brother in the Masonic Lodge of Mexico City. It was through his efforts alone that John Stewart gained his freedom from a Mexican jail to return to Canada, even after all those avenues had failed. End of chapter 19.